Like his Republican colleague Lindsey Graham, independent progressive Senator Bernie Sanders also sat down this morning for an interview on Meet the Press. But unlike Lindsey Graham, Bernie Sanders did a hell of a job, and he did not pull his punches at all while remaining true to his principles. Shocker to MAGA Republican politicians out there. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a couple of clips to look at in this video. Bernie Sanders, love him or hate him, this is not a guy who minces his words. This is not a guy who pulls his punches. And this is a guy who stays pretty true to his principles, as reliable as a politician can possibly be. Even if you disagree with those principles, even if you think the policy prescriptions, which would necessarily be implicated by those principles, even if you disagree with them, hard to find a more principled politician than Bernie Sanders. And so he was asked by Kristen Welker to weigh in on the incoming Trump administration and notions of dictatorship and oligarchy, and he made some pretty damn good points that we really have to emphasize, starting with this one.
You know, when Trump talks about sending to jail people who are on that January 6th committee, that sounds like being a tin pot dictator. So I would hope that we have an FBI and a Justice Department that protects the civil liberties of the American people and does its best to protect American democracy.
Well, we know the White House is considering potential preemptive pardons of those who've clashed with President-elect Trump. In light of what the president-elect said to me, that yes, he does think that members of the January 6th committee should go to jail, do you think that Mr. Biden should issue preemptive pardons for the entire January 6th committee?
Well, I think he might want to consider that very seriously. Look, that is an outrageous statement. This is what authoritarianism is all about. It's what dictatorship is all about. You do not arrest elected officials who disagree with you, who undertake, and, you know, when...
Correct. Now, of course, you can already hear it, right? I imagine most of you can hear it when you hear him talk. You can already hear the MAGA Republican politician, the MAGA Republican apologist go, well, isn't that what you all did? Didn't you all arrest elected officials? Well, actually, the only elected official that Department of Justice under President Biden arrested that I'm familiar with, Bob Menendez, a Democratic senator. I think Henry Cuellar, a Democratic congressman, was under investigation. What elected Republican was arrested by Biden's DOJ? Donald Trump was out of office when the investigations against him were generated and the indictment. But even then, as we've discussed, kind of frustrating to hear this idea that, oh, Democrats do it too. It's both sides of the same. No. President Biden's DOJ bent over backwards to avoid a fight with Donald Trump. They gave him a year to return the national defense information to which he was not entitled, which he violated the law to have. They gave him a year, which is about 2 years more than they would give anybody else. They gave this man, a private citizen who just happened to be a former president, a year. Please give us back the goddamn documents. And what's interesting is when Trump was eventually prosecuted for the willful retention of national defense information and for conspiracy and to obstruct justice and all these things, he actually wasn't prosecuted for the documents he returned, thus proving the FBI's morality in this case. They could have said, hey, give us back the documents, and Trump did it, and then they could have, prosecuted him for it anyway. Instead, it was good faith. Give us the documents, we won't prosecute you. And the documents he did return, he wasn't prosecuted for. The documents he kept and shuffled around and tried to hide and conceal from the FBI and obstruct justice, he was eventually prosecuted for those. The January 6th / conspiracy case to overturn the 2020 election by sending fake electors and all that stuff, that criminal conspiracy, well, again, President Biden's DOJ, they didn't want to investigate Donald Trump. We've talked about this. One of my big criticisms of Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray, because they waited more than a year. They were desperate. There's been extensive reporting about this. They did not want the DOJ to be seen as political. And they dragged their feet. And those cases didn't really come to fruition anyway, because one was dismissed by a Trump-appointed judge, and the other, Jack Smith, requested to be dropped. Because Donald Trump is going to be the sitting president. What Donald Trump has threatened to do is prosecute people who have been on political committees that he finds offensive, that he doesn't like, that he feels is unfairly critical of them, or at least claims to. That would be like President Biden saying, or Vice President Harris saying, you know what? I'm going to prosecute Jim Jordan. He sits on this weaponization of government subcommittee. I don't like that. They're targeting us. If I win, I'm going to go after Jim Jordan, and I'll find a reason to do so. That would have been wrong, by the way. That would have been wrong if Kamala Harris had done that, but she didn't do that because she's morally superior to Donald Trump. What Donald Trump is doing is unique. Every time Donald Trump has run for office, 2016, 2020, and 2024, he has campaigned publicly on jailing his political opponents, investigating, prosecuting, jailing them, sometimes even executing them. Democrat has never done that. Democrat has never, ever done that. This is something where just Donald Trump is uniquely morally inferior. And MAGA Republicans make excuses for it. And the sad thing is, they'll say, well, when he was president before, he didn't try any of that, but he did. That's another, lie that we have to relentlessly fact check on this channel, which is that the Department of Justice under Donald Trump did investigate Trump's political opponents after he publicly and privately pressured them to do so. Well, now you can say, well, they weren't successfully prosecuted, they weren't convicted. Yeah, but that's because there wasn't a predicate to do so. They tried. They went looking. And eventually they had to get to a place where they're just like, there's nothing here to pursue it further. But that in and of itself, even beginning a preliminary investigation on your boss's political opponents simply because they are political opponents, that's wrong. It would be wrong for a Democrat to do it. It's wrong when Trump does it. And that's what Trump did. And the difference is between now and then is that now he won't have people in place to tell him no if that's what he chooses to do. So again, Bernie Sanders is right to call this out. But there's another clip as well I want to show you here where the topic goes from dictatorship to oligarchy.
As President Trump comes into office, we have got to understand, Kristen, and this is something I feel very strongly about, and it's not talked about enough. We are moving rapidly into an oligarchic form of society. Never before in American history have so few billionaires, so few people had so much wealth and so much power. Never before has there been so much concentration of ownership, sector after sector, power of Wall Street, and never before in American history, and we better talk about this, have the people on top had so much political power. We can't go around the world saying, oh, well, in Russia, Putin has an oligarchy. Well, we got an oligarchy here, too. And in this last election, in both parties, billionaires spent huge amounts of money to elect their candidates. Here in the state of Vermont, we believe we have town meetings, one person, one vote. That's democracy, not billionaires buying elections. Those are the issues we got to focus on. We got to rebuild the middle class, 60%.
So Bernie, obviously he's been ringing this bell for some time, but it's never been truer than it is now. I mean, the amount of billionaire support behind Donald Trump in terms of hard power, in terms of the Trump administration, yikes. Manu Raju did a tweet about this, which was retweeted by Mehdi Hassan. The big donors filling top advisory and cabinet roles of Trump's administration, with more than 30 of the names picked for various positions so far having donated his campaign or outside groups backing him. Elon Musk, $262.9 million that he donated in one form or another to the Trump campaign. Linda McMahon, nominee to be Secretary of Education, $22 million, $21 million. Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, $9 million. Warren Stevens, Ambassador to the United Kingdom, $3 million. Kelly Loeffler, former Republican Senator from Georgia, Small Business Administration Director, $2.93 million. Charles Kushner, a convicted felon, father, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who Trump pardoned and is now made ambassador to France, $2 million. Jacob Hellberg, Undersecretary of State, $2 million. Scott Bessent, Secretary of the Treasury, $1.5 million. Nearly 36 of Donald Trump's picks to serve in his incoming administration donated to his campaign or to the deep-pocketed outside groups that worked to elect him, a CNN analysis of federal campaign records show. They range from tech multi-billionaire Elon Musk, who has emerged as the single largest undisclosed political donor of the 2024 presidential election. And by the way, a guy who said publicly that he wasn't going to donate to either campaign. Now, some people say, well, he didn't donate to the campaign. He donated and dedicated all his resources to a political PAC, to a political group that had the express purpose of trying to get Trump elected. But that's a distinction without a difference, as far as I'm concerned. The others close to Trump tapped for key roles throughout government. In all, 8 of his cabinet picks and their spouses donated more than $37 million combined from their personal accounts to aid Trump, the review found, underscoring the proliferation of ultra-rich Americans now poised to shape U.S. policy in the second incoming administration. Stunning. Stunning. So when people talk about corruption and oligarchy, it's here. It's here. I mean, this, and again, it goes back to so funny, and that's why so many conversations going on right now, folks, about populism and economic populism and, sticking it to the elites. This was the case in Trump term 1. The fact, it's not a matter of opinion. Trump was the swamp. Trump was the elite. We're talking about a multi-billionaire real estate mogul from New York bringing in billionaires and multimillionaires to run his administration to an unprecedented degree. That is the swamp. Now he's doing it again, but even swampier. So it's the incongruity that this is the frustrating thing. Again, Trump won. There's no reason to lie. And I imagine you could come up, with some good faith arguments if you think that Trump's a disruptor, but don't lie. Don't say, oh, he's going to drain the swamp. By making it swampier? It's like, I'm going to drain this tub of water by adding more water to the tub. What the hell are you talking about? These are mutually exclusive. By definition, you are not draining the swamp by creating more of the swamp. You are not invoking a populist policy or a populist administration by handing all the levers of power to multimillionaires and multi-billionaires. There's an incongruity here, and that's why when people say, Josiah, listen, there's a real populist movement in MAGA. And damn it, Trump is imperfect, but he is their vehicle. It's like one of you is full of shit. Either they're full of shit because they don't understand what populism is, or they're not paying attention to what Trump's doing, in which case you really have to have your head in the sand, or one or both of you are lying. But by definition, this is not a populist movement, at least not economically, and none of the proposals that are coming out of this are meaningfully populist. This is not democratizing government. This is not reducing the swamp. This is contributing to the swamp. The rich already have disproportionate power and influence in this country. And, all the conspiracy theories, anti-Semitic, right-wing conspiracy theories about George Soros, liberal Jewish multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire, how he's, this idea that he's puppeteering global politics and certainly domestic politics. Okay, that's a conspiracy theory. It's ridiculous, but think about it. So many people simultaneously hold that view and are cheerleading a candidate like Donald Trump, who is giving so much power and influence to Elon Musk. Destiny's talked about this. Others talked about this. They're celebrating a guy who, with his Neuralink, literally wants to put chips in people's brains. Literally. This is one of the many, 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 many advantages of MAGA and the Republican Party. They don't have to be consistent. They can just lie. They can just say one thing and do another, and it's fine. They're at a point where they enjoy it. There's a contempt. Like when you point out, well, wait a minute, you just said this and now you're doing the exact opposite. There's a contradiction there, and you can just see the smugness, the glee, because they know how frustrating it is. They know that people have such an intrinsic allergy to hypocrisy, and they're weaponizing hypocrisy. They know it. They love it. They have triumphed over standards and decency and hypocrisy. They don't care because they know that their supporters are either not paying attention or they also celebrate the hypocrisy as a tool by which to own the libs, even if it means owning themselves too, even if that means screwing themselves over. As long as you own the libs, this is where we are. Great interview by Bernie Sanders. Stark contrast to what we saw from Lindsey Graham. There's a reason these two men are seen as disparately competent, why Bernie Sanders is so respected and why Lindsey Graham is not, even by his own party. So, in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.